Welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Conversation. I'm Dusty White, and I'm here with Pastor Bob Thune and Pastor Chris Hellman of First City Church.
Whoa, the wah-wah this time.
On Wednesdays, we sit down to talk about how the gospel of Jesus Christ connects to the questions and issues of everyday life. And today, we're telling some stories.
Snack shout out real quick. We got some banana zucchini bread, I assume, from my friend Jonathan and his wife, who I called out on the recent podcast. He was the guy that called it snack time.
Attaboy, Jonathan.
And so I saw him on Sunday, and I was like, hey, if you're going to mock our podcast, you better bring us some snacks. And he did. He came through.
Nice. Very good. It was very good.
I just met with a guy from Coram, and he brought me a bag of Girl Scouts Thin Mints Bites.
Yeah, that's a thing.
He said, I was just at Costco, and they had these, and I figured you need some. And I didn't know these existed. And why was this not thought of years ago?
Oh, man, they're so good. Costco has bags of these different kinds of bites, and for some reason, just putting them in that shape and that texture makes everything taste like 20% better.
Yeah, it's like they took a Girl Scout Thin Mints box and just like put them all in little bite-sized pieces.
When I was a kid, Girl Scouts had to come to like your front door.
Yeah.
Now you just go to Costco.
And now they just assault you outside the grocery store. Hey, you know what we want to do is just tell some stories. Here's what I was thinking recently. Number one, I'm trying to get better at being a storyteller for two reasons. One, because it's a skill I need to develop as a preacher and communicator, but also because, man, God's given us such a rich heritage as a church, and I just sometimes realize, like, man, I haven't told any of these stories, and they just live in my memory. I want them to live somewhere besides my memory. And I was particularly thinking, so I was like, man, we need to just spend a podcast talking about some of the odd things that happen when you pastor a church, because I realize there's listeners out there that are like, the subtitle of this podcast is, yeah, that really happened. Because I got a lot of stories like that. They're like, no, these are the things that happen. And what do you do? How do you tell this story? You know, how do you just forget that these are the things that happen in pastoring and leading a church? So I'm going to start with this. I was just like, guys, let's think of like the most zany, the weirdest, the oddest things that have happened in pastoring a church. I'm going to tell two stories to begin. I'm going to tell the story of when a woman interrupted my sermon and when a guy from your church preached the conclusion of my sermon.
Whoa.
I don't think he's adjacent to your church. He's connected through family.
Through family, yeah.
So here's what happened. We were, to dial back the clock, we planted Coram in 2005. We planted in downtown Omaha. If you don't live in Omaha, it's like cobblestone streets, brick streets, old historic brick warehouse buildings. It's like the coolest, oldest part of Omaha. And we were meeting at this building that was like 120 years old. Really cool spot in the city, but also right in the heart of downtown, where there's just a lot of eclectic people, a lot of homeless people, a lot of just kind of people hanging out outside, not sure what they do. And so you just run into all kinds of interesting situations. I was preaching. This was in the first 2 years of our church. We're in the middle of a sermon. This woman walks in off the street into the room, very obviously high. I mean, very obviously like on some kind of a drug trip. The way the building was, where I stood, there was a door that you came in and there was a wall, and so you came in the front door, you sort of went around this wall and came into the room where we met, which meant that where I was preaching from, my back was to the front door, but there was also kind of a wall between us. Okay, so what that means is anytime somebody came in, you could just hear everything.
I remember that too. You could like see the door open behind the preacher.
I mean, So I'm in the middle of the sermon. This woman walks in, and she literally is talking at the top of her lungs to herself. I mean, she's like, kind of like, I don't know if she's hallucinating or what, but she is just having a really loud conversation that's very nonsensical with herself. She walks in, and I mean, it's the longest 10 seconds of my life. It took her 10 seconds to get from the front door to like around the corner where you come into the room we were meeting in. And I was just like, oh my goodness, what do I do in this moment? She turns the corner mid-sentence, talking loudly to herself in a totally nonsensical way, turns the corner, somehow in that moment realizes this is a church gathering, and immediately stops talking, comes and sits down in the front row,
Man,
and just starts like acting like she's been in church her whole life.
Wow.
And so no one had ever seen this woman before. I didn't know who she was. I assumed like, I don't know if she's here with somebody. I don't know if this is somebody's friend. So I just keep going, and she literally from the front row. I mean, she came in the middle of the sermon. She came in high, but from the front row starts going, amen, That's right. Just like chiming in on my sermon.
Yeah.
And it was really funny for me because I was like, this has not happened to me before. This did not happen at the mega church I used to work at in the suburbs. Also,
we're in a different part of the city.
Also, I was like, this is really weird for everyone in the room because they're just like, what do we do in this moment? Like, do we just let this happen? Is this just totally normal? Does someone need to go like put their arm around this woman and talk to her? Like, what do we do? So long story short, she sat there for the rest of the sermon. And then as I closed in prayer, a couple women went and like escorted her out to the entryway and just tried to like talk with her and figure out who she was and how we could help her. But it was the first moment as a pastor where I was like, oh, things are going to happen during my sermons that I did not expect.
Yeah.
Which gets me to the second story, Chris. And to this day,
he's going to try to pin this on you somehow. I can feel it.
To this day, Dave needs to answer for this. I love Dave. Dave's an older gentleman who was on staff with FCA for years and is well known in our community. And a couple of his kids attended Coram Deo early on. Dave would come to church once a year, a couple times a year, just with his kids, just hang out. He was like one of those guys that like, I don't know if he had a church home, but he was connected to all the churches because he was a parachurch guy and did campus stuff. And so everybody knew Dave. So Dave's sitting in church. This is after we'd moved to the Grace University Chapel building. And I'm preaching. I don't know where. I was in Colossians, I think. And I'm preaching. I get to the conclusion of my sermon. And I'm getting ready to sort of like land the plane. And so, I say a few things. And Dave stands up. I mean, he's like sitting in like the fourth or fifth row in the middle of the room. Stands up, which no one does that in our church, if you stand up, I start to get nervous. Like,
it's not that Pentecostal.
Are you going to rush the stage? Like, what do we, is this a security risk? What are we doing here? Yeah, it's not super Pentecostal, and it's just an odd, I actually don't, maybe people should do things like that more, but it was unusual. So he stands up and he says, "Hey, Bob, can I add a few things to what you just said?"
Oh.
And you let him, though. That's what I think is hilarious. Is you let him.
I had that moment as a preacher where I was like, I do not know what the right answer is to that question right now. Like, I've never had someone stand up in a sermon and say, "Can I add some stuff?" And I had this thought go through my mind of like, if this was a stranger, the answer is definitely no. But it's already awkward because I'm like, if you say no, then you're like the jerk. They're like, oh, you're the pastor, just like doesn't want anybody else to like be able to talk.
I got something to say, man. You trying to shut me down?
So I was like, well, Dave, Dave's not going to say anything heretical. Like so there's all this is happening in a split second in my mind of like, do I say no? Yeah. Do I say? And so I just said, sure. And so Dave, from just standing there in the fifth row, proceeds to just turn around and look at the room and add 4 to 5 minutes of content to my sermon. He just wanted to add some things in that he felt like I hadn't talked about. And so, it started to get awkward because I was like, I don't know if Dave's going to go for 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
He's going to preach a whole other sermon.
What's Dave going to do here? And then finally, he got done saying what he was saying. And he turned around and said, "That's all I got." And he sat back down.
Oh, that's it?
And literally, I just said, well, let's close in prayer. Because, I don't know how do you get back from that moment. So I was just like, let's just pray.
Wow.
So I closed in prayer. And then after that, some of the people in the core team were like, "Hey, so what did you think about that? Like, did you expect that to happen? Had you ever thought about that happening?" And I was like, that was the most paralyzed I've ever felt as a human being. I don't know what to do in a moment like that. And so I sort of made a commitment to myself of like, from now on, the answer to that question is no. I don't care if you're John Piper and you're saying, from now on, if you stand up and say, "Can I add something?" my default needs to be no. Because it's not a good thing to get in the habit of just like, "Hey, anybody in the room want to add something to my sermon?"
That's weird.
That's going to get out of control fast.
Did you stay like just standing up front the whole time?
Yeah, I was just standing up there, but I felt real awkward because I was like, why am I here with a microphone on? Dave's obviously got the room right now. Maybe I should just go sit down. Mm-hmm. And I love Dave, but that was, if I could have another conversation with Dave today, if I run into him, I'd just be like, "Hey man, that was weird when you preached the end of my sermon that one time."
Chances are Dave's done that since then.
That was weird. That was weird for me.
That's just a very generous thing for you to do, Bob. Like I just
giving away the pulpit like that.
That story just kind of knowing you how I know you. I just am surprised that you did that. But I admire you for it.
You catch me off guard, Chris. You never know what's going to happen.
Right.
Never know how generous I might be.
Yeah, I have never had anybody interrupt a sermon. We meet in a high school, so there's not a lot of strange people hanging out front. But I do get what I will get, and this doesn't happen a ton, but it happens enough where I will ask sort of a rhetorical question, and one of the kids in the audience will answer it.
Yeah.
They'll answer it out loud. So, are you ever afraid of someone finding out something about you? No, not really. And it's so sweet and innocent, but and then you just kind of laugh and roll with it. But that's the types of interruptions I get. No one wants to add 5 minutes. They just want to answer questions that I wasn't really asking.
I love that innocence in kids that doesn't understand a rhetorical question. They're just like, you're asking me, so I'm going to answer it.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right. So I don't preach as much as you guys do, but I do a little bit more like people to people stuff. So one time this guy calls me, and his daughter is dating this guy really seriously, and now they're moving towards engagement. Dad's never met the guy at all. He says, hey, would you fly to DC, meet this guy, and then come back and tell me what you think? And I was like, that's really weird.
That's a big ask.
That's weird for all of us. Like, It's weird for me. It's weird for that guy. It's weird for you. So I did it.
That's amazing.
So man, you guys are like all about the things that I would never think that you would. The answer would be yes.
I boarded a plane early in the morning, went to DC. I don't know what this guy even looks like. This is like pre-social media. Okay. So I meet this guy. We have lunch or coffee. He picks me up. He takes me back to the airport. He clearly knows why I'm there. I know why I'm there. And
how'd you approach the conversation, Dusty? Hey, this is your interview. Let's talk about it. I
was like, hey, so we all know why I'm here. And this is weird for you. It's weird for me. And we had a great time together. I mean, it wasn't bad. I came back with very little information. Told the dad, I was like, seems like a good guy. I mean, I get why you're reserved, but okay, funny story about that guy. He is a regular listener to the Wednesday Conversation.
That's what I'm talking about.
He wasn't. He was not at the time, that's for sure. But he is now, and is now attending Coram Deo Church.
That away listeners.
Won him over. Look at that.
Over a decade later. Good dude. Like the guy a lot. That day, though, I'm sure for both of us, we were like, this is definitely one of the weirdest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
What happened with the relationship?
They got married.
Oh, gosh.
They have kids. It's going well.
There you go.
Amazing.
Man, I just love that you guys said yes to things that I would have never thought
you would not have guessed.
Yeah, I would have thought, no, I am not getting on a plane to going to DC. That I have my own family. I have my own responsibilities.
I was fairly new to Coram Deo. I was still kind of like figuring out what I was doing. I didn't have a huge workload at that time. So there was a little bit of flexibility. And so that's what I spent.
Why not take a trip to DC
I spent a day going to DC and back.
Speaking of DC,
long trip for lunch.
The funniest interruption that I wasn't preaching, but I was in the room on staff at the church. So the church we were at in DC, the spots we would meet in usually were across the street from a metro stop, and that's where a lot of homeless people hang out. So there was one location where we had homeless people coming in all the time. Had a lot of interesting conversations with one guy. Told me he was William Wallace's descendant, and that was an interesting conversation. But one time we actually had a guest preacher, and he was, I don't remember the exact sermon topic, but he was talking about something with bread. And there was a couple homeless people sitting in back, and one of them stands up and goes, "Subway has the best bread." And you're like, what do you do with that? And there's the guy preaching, he was like, yes, they do. And just kind of kept going. So that was a pretty funny moment.
I might want to argue with Subway.
I know
I don't think they do really.
No.
It's good bread, but it's not the best.
Yeah.
Jimmy John's is better in my opinion.
Oh, wow. You just invited some emails.
So what I would say is maybe the craziest story of First City outside of people stuff. So our very first Sunday, we almost killed somebody.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So
that's kind of,
so the backstory.
That's a lot out the gate.
Yeah. The backstory in this is when we planted, we had a handful of people in our church with various food allergies. And so we wanted to respect that. But it had to go beyond just gluten-free option. Like we wanted to be very thoughtful with it. So there was a lady in our church who volunteered to home make the gluten-free bread. So she did this. It was so cool what she did. So she made multiple options. We did sat down and did a taste test. Like she put a lot of thought into it. It was really cool. We kind of, okay, so here's the choice. First Sunday, we were really excited. Like our gluten-free bread was better than the regular stuff. But she made it with almond flour And there is one gal in our church that has like a very strong allergy to almond flour.
Oh no.
And so not thinking, just like gluten-free, not necessarily thinking through all the other details.
Yeah, that's the category you need, gluten-free.
Yeah. So she takes it, she has a bite and proceeds to start to have this allergic reaction. Thankfully it was a small enough bite that it didn't, immediately drop her there, but it was scary. And so we had to go through this whole we have to reevaluate how we are doing our gluten-free bread. So now we went from this gourmet, really tasty gluten-free bread to now where it tastes basically like cardboard. It just has to do nothing. There can be nothing that could potentially kill somebody. But, and if you think about my wife, who has shared her struggles with OCD on this podcast, you think of her worst nightmare.
Being responsible for someone's death.
That's your first Sunday as a church. So that was kind of a crazy moment. Now, the gal who had the reaction was very gracious about it and talked us through hey, this is, things to consider when you're making gluten-free bread. So
people, could I get a heads up next time?
Yeah. It was not the thing as all the you think of all the details of your first Sunday. That was definitely not on the list.
Is she okay today?
She is okay today. Okay. Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
I'm a little, these things make me nervous. You were talking about homeless people wandering in. This is my favorite connections story I've ever had. When we were meeting downtown at the Jones Street building, there were, lots of homeless people around. I met a guy in what we called the entryway, whatever little space where people could gather. I met a guy there that I hadn't seen before. He looked probably homeless, or vulnerable in that way. So I was chatting him up. I said, "Hey, how'd you hear about the church?" Because I told some people this the other day, and they had no idea, Dusty. For the first 3 years of our existence as a church, we had a website, but we did not have any information on where we met. So literally, because I wanted it to be to show up, you have to know somebody here. So it was the hardest church to attend, because if you were hey, I want to go to that Coram Deo, where do they meet? There was no way to find out other than I know somebody who goes there.
I know.
And that was intentionally on my part, because I did not want just random, attractional growth. But what that meant was, we were sort of we developed a bad reputation. It's well, I guess you guys are so exclusive. You just don't want people to come to your church. It's kind of jerky. So I met this guy, and I was since it was that season of our church, I was obviously you're here because you know someone. I mean, there's no other way you would know about our existence. So I said, "Hey, so how'd you hear about the church, And his answer was, "Well, I live underneath the deck."
Boom. You're at my house now.
I went out there. There's a huge deck on this building. I mean, really huge, outdoor space. I went out there. I was sure enough, man, this dude had a whole tent. And I mean, he was all set up under there. And I was what? I did not have this on my bingo card either.
Wow. I wasn't under the tent.
I wasn't planning on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a guy that lives under the deck. He's
hey, you guys did that baptism. It rained in my house.
Seriously. Yeah. It was not cool. So that was another crazy moment. Here's another. This one was at the middle school. We've had, is it 4 locations, Dusty?
Yeah.
Downtown building, Grace University, middle school, and now finally the building that we own. We met at the middle school for 11 years. 8 years. And the middle school was a challenging place. Odd things would happen occasionally. I got done preaching. And the way our service worked at that time, generally I would introduce communion after the sermon, but then sometimes I wasn't serving communion, and so you and other elders would come and serve communion. I would go out into the hallway just to sort of catch my breath or see what was going on with kids ministry, or just be there, because a lot of people were, milling about in and out right after service. So I go out in the hallway to get ready to sort of say hi to folks, and one of our staff comes out of the bathroom just sort of white, and he's "Hey, I just found a 9mm weapon on the back of the toilet."
Yeah.
And he's there. We had a police officer in our church, and he's "Hey, I already told this guy, and he's called the cops, and he's got the gun." But he was totally freaked out. He's just "Why was I found a weapon in the men's bathroom?" So we kind of went into high alert mode, because this was man, weapons in churches is not something to mess around with, especially in the world we live in. So we're assuming dude, is someone trying to do people harm here? Well, literally, so I'm standing out there. There's probably 2 minutes go by. This dude bolts out of the service and runs into the bathroom. and starts looking around frantically. And I realize what has happened is this guy has a concealed carry permit. You're not supposed to carry in a school, but some people do.
Yeah.
He had gone in there to go to the bathroom, took his gun out, set it on the toilet,
Whoops.
went back went back into the room to take communion, and then realized, oh gosh, I just forgot my weapon. And so he grabbed somebody and pulled them aside. And I don't know how he asked, like, hey, did you guys find a gun in the bathroom?
And the cops have been called at this point?
The cops have been called.
Oh, man.
And so he just sort of like was like, he went and got his people that were with him and just like left the building. Cause I don't think he wanted to deal with like, I might have to answer to some cops for having a weapon in a building where I'm not supposed to be carrying anyway. So it literally went from like, holy cow, this might be a terrorist attack, to like, oh, the guy kind of made a big mistake right there.
No.
I don't think they ever came back after that day. I never saw them again. They were nice people, but I never saw them. I think that was his last Sunday at Coram Day.
He didn't want to be the gun guy.
How do you come back after that?
Yeah.
You can't be the gun guy.
Oof.
But man, it was a scary moment for 2 or 3 minutes there during communion.
Have you guys had any like weird tech stuff happen?
So I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. What version of it?
Pick the weird tech thing.
What version of it?
I did a whole sermon in the dark.
Yeah, the power went out.
Yeah, we had to do that when during COVID. We had to play musical chairs with our location, and the one location that we met in the longest was this old elementary school south of Bellevue. School was probably built in the 50s, and so it was like this old Cracker Jack gym, and yeah, if the wind blew over 30 miles an hour, like the power went out in this place. It was just it was terrible. So one Sunday morning, everyone shows, the production team shows up, and it's the power's out. And so we're thinking, oh, we can get it back on. Just could not get it back on. So people start showing up, and here's the funny part of it too. They had texted me, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was winter. So I was thinking, kind of just the conditions, the environment in there. And I was just thinking, if the power's out, we shouldn't meet. Like if we know it's out. So I told them, hey, if you can't get the power back on, then let's just cancel. And I show up to service, and I wasn't preaching that Sunday. So I showed up a little later than normal. And so I thought that meant that they got the power back on. So I show up and the power is not on. And Mindy will tell you, he's like, the look on my face just went from like what's going on to like, what is going on? Like almost like this, like anger kind of like, what are you guys doing? I told you what, So it just kind of threw me there for a moment of just like, did they just not listen to me?
Was I not clear?
Yeah. Was I not clear? Like what is going on? And so, we had a service in pretty much the dark. And this is when you were trying to live stream because it was COVID. So someone just got a stand and set their iPhone like right next to the person who would come up to do liturgy or who was preaching. So it was very kind of low tech and we called it first century church.
That's nice. I like that.
Meeting in the dark. Yeah.
First century.
But
that place felt first century too, by the way. I went there one time and I was like, I'm not sure you guys should be meeting here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have to have a debrief of like, hey guys, what happened with the communication breakdown there?
It was, and so what was funny is it was this, they kind of got it on, come off. So it was like this, maybe we can get it back on. So there was this hope that it was going to come back on. So that's kind of how
living in hope.
Yeah. There's kind of this.
Not yet.
Gospel hope, Chris.
We're not completely going against what you said. But the thing is, I will admit, it was a good call to have the service because people really leaned in, sang really loud, it was an experience. So I'm glad that they didn't listen to me.
That's what I remember. We had it happen one time in the middle school where the power went out during a sermon. And so I had to make the choice of like, what am I going to do? And I just took off my microphone and just yelled the rest of the time. And it was totally dark. And people loved it. It was like, oh yeah, this is like, we adapted, It's like, that's part of what makes church planting fun is just like, well, you got to figure it out. And so, yeah, I remember that being my voice was tired by the end of the sermon, but I remember people adapting well. There's
been a couple times where the way it used to be set up meeting in a high school auditorium, the nursing mothers area was, how like in high school auditoriums, you have those back sections you can kind of close off. So we would close off one of those sections. So they were still in the auditorium so they could hear everything. But the plug-in for the soundboard was plugged in that room. No. And so there was multiple times where a baby like and just during worship
your whole sound
or during a sermon, and all of a sudden it's this big like pop, and then like nothing. And so we're like, oh, the baby tripped the power, so gotta get it back on. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
That moment.
One time at the middle school, well, oftentimes we'd show up to the middle school and realize, oh, we're going to be, the theme for the Sunday morning is Beauty and the Beast, because there's an entire play set on the stage that you're not moving. You know, it's made out of like legit wood.
The worst thing about meeting in a school, twice a year we had to work around a, middle school play set.
Yeah.
That they thought they were being really forward with us of like, hey, there's going to be a play set up, just so you guys know. The problem was we never knew what the play was going to be. And some of them were just downright creepy. There was like a year, it was like a vampire one. And I was like, here, I'm trying to like preach the gospel with like vampire backdrop. I mean, it's just weird.
It's Easter, but not really, because the stage set is different.
Yeah.
Also in that middle school, we had a bird flying around one Sunday.
Yes.
And the only place the bird would land was on the emergency light. So it'd fly through this entire auditorium. And I was thinking like, man, what are we going to do? We cannot have this bird flying around during church. This is gonna be bad. So I sent my son home.
Yeah.
He got a pellet gun, and he's a pretty good shot. So, and again, the only place this bird would land is on top of the emergency light. So you're like, man, if you hit that light, we're hosed.
We're in trouble.
So we got 2 tennis rackets that we found at the middle school. He hits the bird. The bird falls. I quick acted like, like we just wounded the bird. So get the tennis rackets, get the bird outside. But it was just in time for the first service.
I didn't even know this ever happened.
I know you weren't there yet.
This is the first time I'm hearing this
You
story.
weren't there yet.
This is amazing.
But and the bird would fly like down into the seats. It was like a sparrow, and then it would just like be gone. And then the only place you could ever find it was on the emergency light.
Huh.
So
hey, thanks for
good.
getting rid of that bird. That was an innovative solution, by the way.
We did it.
Sometimes you need a middle school age kid with a BB gun to have church.
To this day, there were some people on the worship team worried about that bird, but I just want you to know we took care of it.
So you brought up the play. So that's always been an interesting thing too. One of the things we're able to do is kind of put that scrim over. So it's a little bit of a cover. So you're not looking directly at the set. But the first year after we planted that spring, there was something with like the way the set was kind of behind, and then the lighting, and it was like the way it was shining on, it looked like these giant like teeth above and like underneath me. So there's pictures of that Sunday. People like snap pictures where it looked like I was being eaten by some like giant shadow monster, like where I was standing and preaching. So they're pretty funny pictures. But we had, so in our current building, as with a lot of older buildings, we get bats. And so the first,
bats are the worst.
Yeah. The first women's event we did there, during I think Mindy was speaking, and all of a sudden
this isn't going well already.
Bat poop just like was dropping on this table, like, and so and it was landing on this one lady's kind of like in front of her, like on her plate. Thankfully, of all the women in our church that would freak out the least, she was it. So she was just kind of like, "That's not good," and she's like, "I know what that is," and so she got
a BB gun.
She's kind of like, "Yeah, you went and got a BB gun. We shot the bat," but yeah, that was an interesting, like a ladies' event, a ladies' brunch where everything is very nice, and here's bat poop like literally dropping from the ceiling.
These are the things that happen when you're leading a church. I don't know.
Yeah, you think you want to plant a church? You got a BB gun.
You ready? Get your BB guns.
I'm going to bring our story time to a close with the donuts and chocolate milk story.
Oh my word!
Most people at Corumdale have heard it because it's one of those moments that lives on in our history. But our listeners,
before you tell the story, I just want it noted that I was not around.
I think our listeners will enjoy.
I was not an officer in this church.
This is another one where I'm surprised you gave this much responsibility.
I was not an elder.
Yeah, you're not an elder. Yeah.
Our church was small. We were meeting downtown at the downtown building. I was trying to empower other leaders and give people responsibilities. And there was a guy named Kurt. Love him to this day. He's a great dude. He was part of our core team. He was the only guy in our core team that had a seminary degree. Like, I didn't even have a seminary degree yet. Only Kurt, So I was like, of all the people I can trust with like something important theologically, it's this guy with a seminary degree. So I was like, hey, will you lead communion this week? And the way it was like, I was going to preach. I was going to close in prayer. then Kurt would come up and kind of lead us into the table, and then he was in charge of like getting the elements and, figuring out who's going to serve and all that stuff. So it was a way to just like take that off my plate, give it to a guy in our team that I knew, I can trust this guy. He's got a seminary degree. So I get done preaching. I said, I pray. I go sit down. Kurt gets up and he says, I thought today we'd do something a little different for the Lord's table. And as soon as he said those words, I was like, oh, this is not going to be great. I don't know that I want us to be doing something different. And Kurt, the great thing about Kurt was he was real creative about like trying, he really wanted to like connect things to the scriptures, but also be sort of like innovative and creative. So he starts trying to set up communion this way. He's like, when the early church practiced the Lord's Supper, we know from like Corinthians, it's probably more of a meal. Like they're probably, they probably just weren't taking bread and wine. They're probably having a full meal, like they would at the Passover. And so, this morning, I wanted to think about what would it be like for us just to treat the Lord's Supper more like a meal, more like we're having breakfast together. This was at this point in our church's life, we were meeting Sunday mornings, and just one service. So he said, as you come to the Lord's table this morning, I want you to think about the sweetness of Christ's body. And as you come, I want you to sort of ponder what it means for you to enjoy the blessings he's bestowed on us. And this morning for communion, rather than bread and wine, we're going to have donut holes and chocolate milk. And I just wanted to feel like we're having breakfast together. So he said, it was sort of like, he didn't even treat it like it was part of the service. He was like, so the service is over. Let's go enjoy donut holes and chocolate milk. And I mean, that for everybody that was around our church at that time, it's like one of those Sundays they all remember because they're like, well, this is kind of awkward suddenly. Like, what do I, is this what we're supposed to be doing? I think there was people that were literally like, this church might be heretical. I think I'm leaving. Yeah. And there were other people like, this is the awesomest thing ever.
This is one of them emergent churches.
That's right.
All the kids were like, donut holes. Yeah. I was like, oh boy. So I had to, so that was the Sunday that we had for the Lord's Supper, donut holes and chocolate milk. And then that week later, I had to just follow up with Kurt and be like, hey man, I love you, but I don't think we can do that ever again. Like we got to have some boundaries around the Lord's table. Like Jesus said, this is my body, but he was holding up bread. He wasn't holding up donut holes. I know they're a bread product, but different. And so that's one of those moments that, there's a reason, Chris, why now there's some structure around how we do communion and, who's in charge of it, who gets to lead it. You learn these things the hard way sometimes.
Yeah.
So basically, like if you show up, you could just say, "Hey, Bob, could I add a few things? And I would also like to intro communion."
If you're that guy, it's an automatic no. It's an automatic no.
Hey, I can respect it's chocolate milk and not like Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been worse. It could have been worse.
I don't understand. I'm not sure it could have.
Well, maybe not. Okay, maybe not.
Why is chocolate milk better than Mountain Dew?
I don't know.
Also, that Sunday you had like a regional leader guy around, right?
Oh yes. I mean, it was just like it was the worst. It was one of the Sundays we were like, not this Sunday. This is like there's people here who like are donors. We need them to feel like what we're doing is serious, and all of a sudden it feels really juvenile.
It's a glorified youth group.
So yeah, it was an odd moment, but those were back in the sort of like emergent church days when people were doing strange things.
Yeah.
Naming
their church like Latin things and stuff like that.
Seriously. That's
Corndale.
Enough. That's enough from you. Well, listeners, thanks for indulging us as we tell some of the stories of church planting and church leadership. We might have we have so many stories to tell. We might just do a round 2 of this particular episode. So let us know if you liked hearing some stories of church leadership. As we always say, feel free to let us know other things you want us to talk about. We want to try to respond to questions that listeners have and to things you're encountering as you try to live out the gospel of Jesus in everyday life. So feel free to let us know if there's other things you want us to talk about.
The goal of this podcast is to equip our own church for discipleship and mission. So if you're a Christian or a church leader in another context, we thank you for listening in, and we pray that this conversation might be helpful to you as you minister in your context. We always love to hear from listeners, so if you have thoughts, questions, or future podcast topics, send an email to podcast@cdomaha.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Wednesday Conversation.